Welcome to another episode of Nintendo Ninja News. It's episode 11. I'm your host, Chris Tysus. And this is a bit of a special podcast for this one. And the story basically is focused as a bit of a tribute to a friend of mine and a friend of many others called Mark. He was the founder and admin of the Canberra Streetpass group in Australia, for those international listeners who have no idea where Canberra is or what it is. It's the capital city of Australia. And our group was created a couple of years ago by him as a desire to put together Nintendo fans and people. And that was probably around 2013, around April. And as he said, the first meetup that he did to get Nintendo fans, no one turned up. And that was a bit of a bummer. But the next one that he organised, he got 20, 30 people. He had a lot of people turning up. And so in this sort of tribute that I'm thinking of on the go here, the difficulty of creating a street pass group is always pretty difficult in different towns and suburbs and places like that. But in a place like Canberra, where the population is something like 350,000, compared to much bigger cities such as Sydney with 4 million, Melbourne with probably a little less than that. Brisbane's amount is over 2 million people living in the city area. To have created a group this successful and this well done in just 2 years is nothing short than astonishing. So going back to the beginning of the group, Nintendo was doing a little bit of promoting of the Street Pass groups, and we got a very fortunate break because of that. And we had a lot of people turning up to the meetup, and it was out in a place called Grimmer Place, and it was outside. And it was the middle of winter, and it was cold. It was just, shivering and all that sort of thing. And we came down and we had, I think the thing that probably most people remember is the Mario Kart tournament that was held. And with two people, Angus and Monita, and a few others too, some of the originals who turned up to that meetup. And we were all huddled around in a circle. And it was just cold. Like we were literally trying to use our body warmth to get through the meetup because it was particularly cold. And it was the first true blue meetup with a lot of people turning up and that. And that was a lot of fun. And I think it was a lot of fun to meet a lot of people who were very like-minded. And as the group continued to grow, we found a couple locations in the Canberra centre. And we moved from one to the other when the Canberra centre was extended. This is a shopping centre that we go to for one of our meetups. And the group continued to build and grow with street passing and doing those initial games and playing Mario Kart. And our first big sort of game addiction in the group was probably Animal Crossing New Leaf. And that was an absolute amazing game. I never played anything in the series, but this was probably the first 3DS game that really hooked me in, apart from Mario Kart, which I play pretty regularly. And we've played other great games over time, such as Pokemon and Monster Hunter and just a whole host of games. And as the group continued to grow and Mark sort of helping out and leading us, we had another meetup at a pub at King O'Malley's. And that grew into bringing the Wii U to play games on that. So you had a meet up each fortnight, and I think that came around because, once a month was just not enough for some of us, and we had a lot of good people in that group that we probably wanted to see more often. And what was the interesting thing about the Streetpass groups and what Nintendo did, and how sort of Mark kept on growing things, sort of almost by a very organic type of growth this group has had, is I think one of the most important elements that the Canberra Streetpass group did, and what Mark did and the others did collectively together, was the street passing was just the bait. It was just the thing that sort of drew us together as Nintendo fans. And I think the biggest thing that I think people got out of it was the friendships that we picked up on each other, and all the great little in-jokes and the great little times that we had playing games, and all those little enjoyments that we had playing together. And that's something that you don't see in modern gaming. It's just something that you just don't have that feel for anymore, especially now that modern day consoles and people playing on the PC, it's very sterile. It's very to a point where you're just playing online. You don't see the human interaction. You don't go off and meet people in community groups and things like that. And I think what Mark was able to do was to bring some of that old school gaming back together, where it was like back in the 90s with the original Pokemon series on the Game Boy and the Game Boy Color, where you had to go and physically meet up. In the old days that I remembered, when I would go on the school bus with my Game Boy Color and Pokemon Yellow and had the Game Link, and I would sit in one of the school bus seats, and the friend would sit next to me or behind me, and we would, push through the Game Boy Link through the two seats, and we would try to trade Pokemon and fight and battle. And that's sort of what the Streetpass group reminds me of, is a very, going back to that time that I thought that we had generally lost. A sort of time and era that I thought, well, we have the internet now, so I guess those type of things that I used to enjoy when I was young, it's just not going to happen anymore. It's just not going to happen anymore. And I look at some of the other Streetpass groups, the Melbourne one's building, Sydney only meets up once every 2 months, and some of the others are a bit sketchy in information and details. But I think what Canberra proved, and I think what Mark proved, was a small community and a small city can have a successful Streetpass group, and can be more than just the games. It can be about building long-lasting friendships and great times playing with Nintendo. And Reggie, the CEO of Nintendo America, said this really great line, and I think it's almost our motto, as sort of our tagline to our group. And he said, "There's nothing wrong with having a little bit of fun." And I think that really does speak true to what our group is about. We don't take things too seriously. Maybe we might get a little bit serious when we're playing Smash or Mario Kart, and we throw down something when we get a blue shell. But at the end of the day, we're just having fun. We're just having a good time. And I think that's sort of the charm and the magic of the group, is trying to bring in like-minded people. And I think we were lucky that we found a lot of those good people right at the beginning of the group, and I think that's why the group was able to grow so quickly, was we were very fortunate to find all these great people, all these like-minded people who wanted to play Nintendo games. They were big, passionate Nintendo fans. They wanted to find other people who were like them and enjoy playing not just one or two selected games, but a wide selection of games. We have a lot of people in this group who have interests from Monster Hunter to Animal Crossing to Fantasy Life to Pokemon, Mario, Bowser, Legend of Zelda. All these different interests is the thing that keeps the group interesting. Every month, every season, every year, there's something new and different happening for the 3DS. And there'll be different challenges too when a new handheld's released in the coming 2 years. And I think it's just been amazing how Mark has been able to organically grow an idea that I thought of a few months after the 3DS was released. And I was hearing news about people doing Streetpass groups in America and the UK. And I thought about it for 10 minutes or half an hour, and I thought, maybe I could do something like that. But I discarded it saying, it's too hard. Put it in the too hard basket. Because it's Canberra, it's a small place. We're not going to be able to find lots of Nintendo fans, people who are really passionate enough to turn up to each meetup to really give a group a sense of heart and soul. But I was proven wrong. Very, very wrong about that. And I think when people look at Canberra and they think of the possibility of having a great group like this, and you think, is that even possible? And I think it is because Canberra is a small place. It's a small community of really good people. And it's easy to get to the meetups. You know someone of someone else that can do something or help you out. And this group is pretty much connected to, people who are into comic books and people who are into cosplay and people who are interested in TVs and movies and writers and theatre people and people who do trivia nights and all these exciting things. Where I believe somewhere in Sydney or in Melbourne, that would be much harder to achieve, to find all those different interesting people to sort of come together and have that sort of network. So, and I think that's been the amazing thing. And Mike himself has been very, humble and low-key about this sort of stepping down as admin. And he's always been like that. He's sort of been the guy sort of in the background, sort of turning the knobs and just tweaking things and just making things better and better over time. And I guess I'm a bit like the Reggie. I'm the guy that posts on the groups all the time and sort of gets the enthusiasm going. But Mark has really been the main driver, the guy that founded this group. And I guess he wanted to make this a little bit low key, and I didn't want to do this sort of tribute podcast until he posted to the group itself that he was stepping down and handing it over to myself, Laura, and Joel, who are going to be like the triforce of admins here to try and do what he's achieved to try to make things better and to keep things going on in the coming years. And I think that we've grown not just as the Streetpass group, but really we're pretty much the Nintendo group of Canberra.